Every pastor just preaches the same sermon over and over. I think you could say the same thing about a lot of writers and songwriters.
Andrew is a songwriter, a producer, and of course, the author of the award-winning Wingfeather Saga.
It helped me understand suffering. Janner Igby, the main character in the Wingfeather books, I really had a sense that I'm going to shape Janner Igby into this hero. And I know the only way for him to become that hero is for him to be put in really tough situations. If I am suffering, it could be that the author is shaping me.
Lewis, Tolkien, Catherine Rundle, fantasy books, they so often flow from this rich well of belief.
We can't see the future, which means that logically speaking, there's always reason to hope.
People call us storied creatures. Do you suppose we're in a story? Welcome to Re-Enchanting, the podcast brought to you by Seen and Unseen. I'm Belle O'Reilly, and we are, of course, the podcast that wonders whether the Christian story is somewhere where people are going for re-enchantment and whether it can be found there. And today I am joined by just the most special guest. We are joined by Andrew Peterson. And before I let him say hello, I'm going to give him his nice full bio. So Andrew is a songwriter, a producer, a filmmaker, a publisher, and of course, the author of the award-winning Wingfeather Saga. But he's also the founder of Rabbit Room, which is just the most stunning creative community that just nourishes creators and writers and thinkers of all kinds and then shares them with the world. It's the most generous thing. The stuff that pulls out of Rabbit Room is just so gorgeous. And so Andrew, you were made for a podcast called Re-Enchanting, it seems.
Well, thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Oh, it's just such a joy. We have so much to talk about, so much to pick your brain about. But I'd be remiss if I started anywhere but our signature question. What are you reading at the moment, Andrew Peterson?
Ooh, right now on my nightstand is Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. Because I somehow have never, other than being assigned something in high school and kind of reading Tale of Two Cities, I don't think I really read it. I probably just watched the movie and tried to pass the test. I can't believe I've never read a single Dickens book. So yeah, about a couple of weeks ago, I decided it was time, and I'm about halfway done, and it's great. I love it.
That's a juggernaut of an answer. Yeah, okay. Do you have, so is this book one of your Dickens kind of
It is.
tour?
Yeah.
Okay. It's a good start. It's a solid start.
Yeah. And the funny thing is I know the story just because it's it's the kind of story that has made it into the imagination of so many people. So I know how it ends. And I'm a child of the 80s. So I remember one of my favorite movies when I was a kid was The Wrath of Khan, the Star Trek movie.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And at Spock's funeral, Captain Kirk actually quotes the end of Tale of Two Cities. And I remember as a little boy it making me kind of really emotional. And somebody saying, yeah, that's from Charles Dickens. And I was like, I must read Charles Dickens one day. So now I'm 51. It's time to read him. So
it's one day. One day has arrived. Yeah, okay. I do feel like you get to that point because you just have to sit in anger and resentment with the titles that you're forced to read in school. And then you get over that, and then you're willing to revisit them, and it changes things.
It's so funny, isn't it? Because the only alternative is to not get kids to read great books.
Yeah.
You still have to do it. You still should. Kids should all be reading these books, but there is something about being told what you're supposed to read that makes it hard.
Yeah.
A hard pill to swallow.
I think you're so right. Yeah. So I'm still in the stage of hating Oscar Wilde. I will not go anywhere near Oscar Wilde. And it's so irrational of me. I need to get out of it.
It's so funny. Have you reread books before?
A few.
Are you a rereader?
I'm not. There are exceptions to the rule. So no, as a rule, no, but there are notable exceptions, but they are the cliche exceptions.
Yeah, I have friends who are rereaders, and C.S. Lewis kind of famously talked about how You know, you can't say you love a book if you've only read it once. And I am not a rereader. I have a hard time doing it because I just feel like there's so many books
Yeah.
to read in the world. Why would I go back? But a few times I have, Lord of the Rings being one of the books that I've reread probably 4 times.
Yeah.
And I'm amazed at how different the experience is each time, because I'm a different person each time I approach the story. And
Right.
so, yeah, so like we are such different people than we were in high school. So going back to Oscar Wilde is going to be a completely different experience
It's
when it
gonna be so
happens.
great. Yeah, and do you know what? There's not gonna be that pressure on me of like, because I think this is so much of it, right? It's like there is a right and a wrong thing to think about this tale, pick the right thing.
Sure.
When
Yeah.
that lid is taken off, you know, and you're just like, this will just meet me where I'm at. I mean,
Yep.
that's it. I mean, you're right, but so much
Totally.
of reading is a dialogue, right? And so you as the dialogue partner are changing.
Exactly.
Oh, a gorgeous answer. Okay, you're making me wanna, because I have a picture of Dorian Gray, right? It's on my shelf. It's there ready for when I get over myself, and maybe
Yeah.
today
Yeah.
will be the day. Yeah,
Well,
okay.
if we redo this podcast in a year, you can update me.
Okay, great. It's deal. It's a deal. Um, Andrew, you have so many different creative outlets. Like your work is gorgeously eclectic. And so before we get into a specific, which would be the Wingfeather Saga, I kind of just want to know if you sense that there's a through line, like in all
Hmm.
of the work you do, whether there's like one thread that you can see weaves them all together.
Yeah. By the way, I just heard your Welsh accent when you said work. I found it.
Oh, sure.
We were talking
It
before the recording about your Welsh accent. I love it. I watch
it leaks out.
Would I Lie to You, and Rob is the Welsh one,
Rob, yeah,
yeah, yeah, and so I'm very aware of it when I hear it.
sure.
Anyway, sorry to digress.
No.
Yes, there is a through line. I've been thinking about this. A fair bit recently because I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I turn 52 tomorrow,
Oh,
and so
congratulations.
yeah, and that's kind of like being an old guy in the musician world. I think I still think of myself as a songwriter mainly. I like, even though I really love the books and storytelling. The short answer is yes. There's a through line. It all kind of feels like it's circling the same thing. Um,
Mm,
and I heard someone say, well, I think when I was in college, somebody said every pastor just preaches the same sermon over and over. Like it's like God has given one main sermon to every pastor, and that's the thing that
sure.
they all
Yeah.
circle around. And
Yeah.
and I think there's some truth to that. I think you could say the same thing about a lot of writers and songwriters. Is like feels like we're all just trying to find a way into what is true through a bunch of different doorways. And
Hmm.
so for me, like what I've noticed over the years is that there is a, a flavor or something, like some kind of emotional flavor that is present in the memoirs and in the novels and in the songs, and hopefully in the TV show too. And the thing about the animated series is that it's so collaborative. There's a
Oh.
hundred people on the team, so it's everybody bringing their story to it. But yeah, I think the way that I've thought of it for a long time is that my hope is that I can somehow wake up a longing in people, um,
Ooh.
through the music
Yeah.
and through the stories and whatever else, just to pique that feeling of yearning. C.S. Lewis called it. He used the word Sehnsucht. This
Mm.
German word that means an
Yeah.
inconsolable longing that we all
Yeah.
carry around with us. And sometimes, for me at least, art is the thing that has peaked to that longing. Like, if I'm looking at a certain painting and it takes my breath away,
Mm.
I you have to ask yourself why. What's going on? Why is
Yeah.
my heart responding? And I
Yeah.
think um, that those things eventually lead you to Jesus. That's been my experience, is that it's just kind of like made me realize that there is a maker of this world, and that he's good, and that he is kind, and he makes himself known through the arts and a lot of things.
Mm.
But for me, because I'm an artist, I respond a lot to the arts. So my prayer often when I'm writing a story or a song or whatever it is that, man, that God would use that work to do the same thing for somebody else.
That was really beautiful. It makes me think, and like long-time listeners of Re-Enchanting will honestly roll their eyes at me because maybe there's not an episode at the moment where I don't bring this quote up, but um, that Augustine quote, right, is so famous. The "You have made
Hmm.
us, O Lord, for yourself, and our hearts are restless until they find their rest in you."
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
pointing out the both things, right? It's like pointing out the restlessness in people, and that restlessness, like we can sometimes numb ourselves or be so familiar with it that we kind of even forget it's there, or
Hmm.
whatever.
Hmm.
So it's about pointing to
Yeah.
that, but then also pointing to the rest that is on offer that was designed to be the balm.
Yeah, I think so. And the
Yeah.
truth is, like, Christians carry around the restlessness too,
Yes.
even after you know Jesus. It doesn't like somehow quiet the ache, because we're all living in a world that is kind of doesn't work quite right yet. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
we sense the way that it is meant to be and that it used to be, and we can feel the kind of like, I don't know, the lack of justice, or the lack of
Mm,
uh, uh, peace, that there's a brokenness to it that pulls our hearts towards something that is meant to be.
yeah.
And I think, even if, when it's not like when you become a Christian and all of a sudden you're just happy all the time. This is just not how it works. I was at one of the best concerts I ever saw was U2 in Nashville. They came to Nashville maybe 15 years ago or something, played
Sure.
in the Vanderbilt like arena and stadium. And I I love you too, like the big songs, but I'm not like somebody who knows every one of their songs. But like
Sure.
their
Yeah.
big songs, nobody does it like them, you know. So I'll start crying immediately when I hear "Where the
Mm.
Streets Have No Name."
Oh.
And so I brought my kids, my two boys, and Jamie. The tickets were so expensive, I couldn't believe we were doing it. But the boys were probably 8 years old, and I made them listen to Joshua Tree 100 times beforehand so
Yeah.
that they could be familiar with the songs.
Yeah.
And there was something amazing happened to me, and happened to, I think, everybody in the concert, when they sang "I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For."
Mm.
And as a pastor's kid who went to Bible college and in Sunday school and knows all the right answers, that song's
Yeah.
always like troubled me, because I've been like, what do you mean you still haven't found what you're looking for? Like, what more? Bono's a believer, and in the song he talks about, you carried the cross of my shame, I believe it, but I still haven't found what I'm looking for. And like, logically, the song didn't make sense to me. And then standing there with 40,000 people singing, crying, with
Mm.
40,000 people, many of whom aren't Christians, just saying, "I still haven't found what I'm it." Talk about longing. It woke up this deep longing. And so I feel like there was such a beautiful honesty about the fact that it's a song about exile, and we're all
Mm.
kind of living in exile. Like, yes, and I think sometimes you feel the exile most acutely when things are as right as they can be. Do you know what I mean?
Ooh.
So
Yeah.
like Christmas, if you've got all of your family there and everything's just right, there is a kind of a sadness that kind of hovers around the edges of it sometimes. And
Mm.
it does for me. I can't speak for everybody, but like, I remember there used to, like, when I would play my Christmas concert here in Nashville at this place called the Ryman Auditorium, and it's a concert that involves most of my best friends, and it couldn't be any better. It's like in this historic building. Everybody is singing about Jesus. We're all like with our friends. The music is great. And then when it was over, I would always go backstage and just bawl my eyes out. And I would be so confused. Like, why am I crying? Why do I feel
Mm.
this sorrow? And I think it's because when you get so close to what we were made for, but you're still living in
Mm.
exile, you feel the gap more acutely. And so, anyway, that's my working theory. I don't know if I'm right. I'm curious if that resonates with you.
I mean, yeah. I always think Tolkien said, he said we're drenched in a sense, we're soaked in a sense of exile. So,
Hmm.
and you're right. That's so interesting because like we're speaking as two Christians here, and so we would say that the God we believe in, there's an insatiability about him. Like he is inexhaustible. we'll never
Hmm. Hmm.
we'll never like spiral to the bottom. There's
Hmm.
such a sense of like, yeah, this insatiability. So when you just get a glimmer, and then that's as close as you can get for now. Like
Hmm.
you I suppose it's like the closer you get to the veil, the sadder you'll be that the veil is even there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
That's I think what I'm getting at is that,
Yeah.
like, um, you know, I believe that Jesus is real. I believe that he
Mm,
resurrected. But I can't see him right now. And
mm,
for whatever reason, in the way that he's unfolding the story of the cosmos, he has
yeah.
made it so that we are kind of living in this in between. And I think it's
Mm.
okay to acknowledge the sadness of the in between, while also acknowledging the kind of thundering beauty that's on the other side of that veil that kind of like encroaches in our world sometimes.
I think it's more than okay. I think it's probably necessary, right?
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
probably essential. Yeah, I mean, Jesus says that line, when he's about to head off and he says, "It's better for you that I go." The amount of times I've rolled my eyes at him saying that line
Yeah. Yeah.
because you're like, "Well, I know that in ways that I don't understand, you're telling me the truth, but my gosh, if I could
Right.
make that trade, I would."
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
If I
That's
could
great.
have you at my dinner table, I would. This idea that
Right.
you're telling me it's better is just one of those mysteries that I won't understand until,
Hmm.
and maybe never, but until one day I do. I don't know. Okay,
Hmm.
right. Oh man, I need to like pull myself. Okay, right. Let's talk about let's talk about the Wingfeather Saga, if we may, and just see where that goes because there's so much I want to ask you about it. And
Yeah.
I mean, I want to ask you really because whenever I chat to someone who's done a bit of world building, because the Wingfeather Saga, I should say, I don't know if I said at the top, is a fantasy. It's a fantasy saga, right?
Mm.
5 books, is that correct?
4 books with some kind of extras.
Great. 4 books with
Yeah.
some extras. So it's safe to say you've done some world building. You've done some map making. And whenever I
Hmm.
meet someone who's done that, like that is so not in my locker that it's as if I'm meeting like an alien. Where
Oh,
I'm
it's
like,
so funny.
"How do you work?" So I just kind of wanna know, like, were you always aware, like, yeah, in my imagination, there are worlds, there are multitudes. Was
Mm.
that just always in you, do you think?
No, not beyond, the feeling of playing make believe when I was a kid. I think
Oh.
everybody, Tolkien would argue that everybody is inherently creative in this way, like that we all are world builders in one way or another. Um, I think there's a sense in which, like, we're everyone is, I believe, inherently creative, and that creativity looks different for everybody. And
Mhm.
so I think the arts are just one slice of the pie of creativity.
Sure.
um, School teaching is very creative.
Yeah.
Being a doctor is very creative. Engineering is incredibly creative. So I think sometimes it's one of the reasons why I push back gently when people use the word creatives to kind of mean artists, because I want to be like, oh, no, no, no. Um,
Mm,
Homemakers are intensely creative, and so are
mm,
mathematicians, and the artists don't have a corner on that market. And so, if that's true, then, in some sense, I think that it's this God-given human impulse to reshape the world around us. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I can see behind you in the video. I don't know if you're in your office, but you arranged all of that, to look beautiful in a certain way, in a way that pleases you. And so you are a world builder. You may not write fantasy novels, but you build worlds. So, um, well, I would just say that, like, one of the lessons that I learned when I was writing the story, was that I had, a sense of, I don't know, these little snippets of scenes that would pop into my head. And I had a
Yeah.
sense of Janet Igby as the main character, this kid, and kept getting stuck on the story. Like, every time I would try to write it, I would run into, some kind of roadblock that made it really difficult to keep going. And I think most people who've ever tried to write fiction know that feeling of, like, you get
Okay.
that initiating vision and that kind of quickening that you feel, and you're like, I'm going to write a story, and then almost immediately you realize that storytelling is very difficult and it's just hard work. And there are a lot of things you'd rather do at the moment
Yeah,
than
because
that.
long storytelling, right?
Yes,
To
right.
get from A to B and to make that as long as it needs to be, that is what I think. I'm like, "How do you do that?"
Yeah, it's tricky. And one of the things I say when I teach writers or whatever is that uh, being a writer doesn't mean writing. Being a writer means finishing.
Oh,
You
okay.
really don't really understand what a story is until you have finished a story. You know what I mean? Like until
Yeah.
you've got to the end and you've carried your characters to some sense of resolution. There's something that you can only learn when you reach that point. When you cross that finish line, you go, oh, "Okay, I see it," and then you go back
Right.
and reshape the story. But I kept getting stuck, and one of the things that I got stuck on was the simplest little thing in the opening scenes of the story. The kids go to Dragon Day festival in their little town, and I wanted them to buy a sugarberry bun at the market, and I realized that I didn't know what kind of money they used. And I know that
Ooh.
seems like such a small detail, but I was like, wait,
Yeah.
how do they pay for things? And so
Sure.
when I started asking myself that, then I started
Yeah.
going, well, wait, if they use coins, whose face is on the coin? Is it a king or a
Mm.
chieftain or a governor or a president or a prime minister? What technology do they have? That is there a mint where they make the coins? Is there, I don't know, have they figured out steam engines yet? Like, how do they? So all of a sudden, the tiniest little question in
Yes.
my mind opened up all these other
Unlocks.
questions, and I realized that I couldn't tell the story until I researched the world, which meant
Yeah.
meant drawing a map and filling
Okay.
the forest with all the creatures and naming the rivers and the towns, and I don't know, coming up with like little thumbnail histories of the different continents, like coming up with the bad guy. Nag the
Mm.
Nameless is the bad guy in these stories, and I thought that was a really funny name, and so I was like, "Oh, cool. Yeah, the villain is Nag the Nameless, who has no name," and it's one thing to just come up with a funny, cool sounding villain name, and it's another thing to figure out, well, if his name is Nag the Nameless, why is his name Nag the Nameless?
Yeah.
Why does he want to destroy the world? Was he born evil? Probably not. What is he after? And so
Mm.
I have tons of documents on my computer from back in the day when I was having to answer all of those questions first. And then once I had that done, I was able to then have my characters go to the Dragon Day Festival and buy a sugarberry bun. And I knew
Right.
so much about how the story was going to work from that point on.
That is so you're almost did you have to be quite, accountable to the rules of the world you had just built? So thinking about Nag the Nameless, like, or any other character, if you've written their why, did you find yourself sometimes being like, "Well, hang on, I've put that detail in or that's kind of like moment, but actually that doesn't align with who I've researched this character to be, and so actually I
Mm.
need to backtrack."
Yeah, sure. That happens a fair bit. I think there's quite a bit of, um, I remember reading. Do you know Madeline L'Engle? Do you know that name? She wrote
Yes, yes, yeah.
A Wrinkle in Time,
A Wrinkle in
and
Time.
her book Walking on Water is her book about writing, and it's so
Okay.
good. So anybody who's listening and wants to get inside a genius writer's mind about how writing works, I would
Yeah.
commend that book to you. But she and a bunch of other writers talk about how the story has a will of its own and how the characters start doing and saying things that you don't expect.
Mm,
And if you've never written a story, that sounds insane. But it sounds like, what do you mean?
yeah.
The
Yeah.
characters that you made up start having a mind of their own. And it's just true. Like it happens.
Mm,
And when it first happened to me, um, I have experienced the same kind of thing with songwriting, that there is the idea that gets you into the song, and if you try to force the song to become what you intended for it to be, it's probably not going to be a very good song. The
mm,
best songs are the ones that surprise you, and you end up somewhere you didn't expect. So the corollary is obvious with storytelling, is that you have to hold pretty loosely. So even if my quote unquote research into Nag the Nameless early on in the story, um, if I bumped up against it and I felt genuinely like the story wanted to be something else, then I would
Yeah.
go with it.
Yeah, that's so that reminds me, like way back, I think in season 1 of this podcast, we had Marilyn Robinson on, and she was just and she was
Amazing.
just talking, and she was just talking about loving spending time with her characters. So she was like, "I love their company," and so it was almost
Hmm.
the way she spoke about it was exactly how you're speaking about it, almost like her characters led her by the hand, and like were
Yeah.
telling their story as if it was like an autobiography that they were telling her, and she
Yeah.
was like exploring it for the first time. It's such a
It's
mesmerizing thing to hear
it is
authors talk like
crazy.
that.
It is crazy. And it, uh, as a Christian, like I've already taken a leap of faith to believe that there is some great goodness in the world,
Mm.
that is guiding things. And like Tolkien saying, I feel that Gollum still has a part to play. That whole thing, that idea that
Yeah.
in the Lord of the Rings, that Providence is almost one of the characters. That there's this
Oh,
sense
I've
of,
never thought of that. You're so right.
yeah, there's this, Gandalf kind of carries with him this, keeps reminding them, like, our job is not the ends of things. Our job is to be obedient. Our job is to do the right thing and to keep fighting for the goodness of the world, even if we're going to lose, because we trust that there is an author to this story and that this is all a part of a bigger story. And so, yeah, so I'm kind of, if you're a Christian, you've at least in some measure, uh, kind of like signed up for that there is
Yeah.
something guiding in this mysterious, paradoxical way, guiding our lives. I don't know how it all works, but when you're writing a story, you do get this kind of like a little glimpse into how that might happen. To where, somebody asked me what I learned about God in the writing of the Wingfeather books, and my first and easiest answer was, it helped me understand suffering.
Okay.
Um, like, one of the original questions that humans have been asking is, why is there pain, why is there suffering? And it's almost impossible to answer.
Mm.
um, there are no easy answers to that question, but um, if there is a God, why would he allow us to suffer? um, and that's, it's a broken analogy, but in the analogy, Janner Igby, the main character in the Wingfeather books, um, is this kid that I really loved as the author
Mm.
of his story. And in this weird sense, there's a couple things. In a weird way, I never lost sight of who I wanted him to be by the end of the story. Like, I really had a
Mm.
sense that I'm going to shape Janner Igby into this hero by the end of
Wow.
this
Okay.
4-book series. And I know
Yeah.
the only way for him to become that hero is for him to be put in really tough situations, for him to have to learn really hard lessons, and to find himself shaking his fist at the author of his story, saying, why are you doing this to me? And
Mm.
the author of his story wiping tears from my cheeks, saying, I'm so sorry, but this is the only way for you to become who it is that I want you to become. um, and so it's not a perfect analogy. Like, I'm not saying that totally satisfies
Mm.
our big questions, but it did help me. It helped me to make some peace with the fact that, if I am suffering, it could be that the author is shaping me. And so, and there's that. And then the other thing is the whole free will argument. We're always wondering, like, do
Sure.
we have free will, or is God
Yeah.
in control of everything? And I'm like, in this weird sense, Janner was his own character, and he had a long leash, and I let him make choices, sometimes bad choices, and yet I was still always in charge. So there's a paradox there, that storytelling kind of unlocks a little bit for me.
Oh man, that's so rich. That remember I scrolled past Malcolm Gate, who I know is an obsession of both of ours, uh, and many other people. Gosh, I,
Sure.
I I scrolled past this clip. He was on a podcast, and I can't remember what podcast, which is truly terrible of me. But the clip is on his Instagram page, and he's reading. He talks about the second time he read Lord of the Rings, and he's talking about this moment where, um, Sam and Frodo are in absolute peril, and so Sam starts recounting these stories, these ancient and
Mm.
important stories where it looked like everything was was the end, and then all of a sudden things came good. And then he says to Frodo, "Do you suppose we're in a story?" And Malcolm says that as teenage Malcolm, having read, he's like, "Yes, you are, because I'm reading it," and because it was his
Yeah.
second time, he was like, "And I know how it ends. Just keep going." And that
Mm,
sense, and then Malcolm being Malcolm, right? He was like, and you cannot read those words without thinking, and it all gets a bit inception-y, a bit meta.
yeah,
Well,
sure.
well, am I? Well, am I in a story? And it's as
Uh,
if like God is like, yes, you are, because I'm writing it. So it's just, I mean, we're called,
yeah.
people call us storied creatures, right? And it's the way you're speaking is just like dripping with that sense.
That's so
It's
good. It's so good. Yeah. I was watching the the special edition. This is so embarrassing. I'm such a nerd. But when the extended edition of the Lord of the Rings DVDs came out years ago,
yeah.
they had all these documentaries kind of in the special features.
Listen,
And there
Andrew,
was
you're amongst friends here. I too
okay.
watched every moment of that.
It was so fun. When those would come out, our whole family would gather around and watch. It was
yeah.
so fascinating. But there was this scholar, theologian guy that they interviewed at some point. I don't
Mm,
remember who he was, but he was talking about the themes of Lord of the Rings. And he said one of the main themes is the triumph of hope over despair.
mm,
It shows up again, this feeling of, I mean, the Battle of Helm's Deep. How in the world are we going to win? We're not
mhm,
going to win. We just have to keep fighting. That's like a theme that keeps coming up. And anyway, the guy said something I thought was so good. He said, the thing about despair is that despair tells us a lie. Despair assumes that we know the end of our story. So when you
mm,
despair, you've decided there's no way this can end well. I might as well give up.
mm,
But when, as creatures of time, we can't see the future. We have no idea what could happen in the future, which means that, like, logically speaking, there's always reason to hope. There's
mm,
always reason to hope, because the way that Tolkien um, tells stories. The word eucatastrophe, I'm sure, but like
yeah.
in on fairy stories, he coins this word that means a good catastrophe. The if a catastrophe is when everything is great and then it all falls apart. A eucatastrophe, a good catastrophe, is when everything is fallen apart and broken in a story, and then there's the sudden joyous turn, is what Tolkien
Yeah.
calls it. It's the moment when the author lifts the veil and everything is suddenly made right. And that happens at the end of the Battle of Helm's Deep. It happens at the end of the Lord of the Rings. And so that sense that, okay, it's possible that in my life right now, where I'm fighting through the night and I cannot imagine a good end to the story that I'm
Mm,
in, that the author of the story has a eucatastrophe in mind. We can
mm.
never know for sure that won't happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes
So
total
so
sense.
that's the triumph of hope over despair, is that we can't know the future.
Would you say you've made that a theme of your fantasy world?
I mean, of everybody who writes fantasy is aspiring to get somewhere close to the feet of the mountains that are the Lord of the Rings, and I think that, like, of course, while I was writing the Wingfeather books, my goal in some ways was to make it feel to Janner and Kalmar and Lily that there was no way out, and then
Mm,
to surprise them. And I wanted the reader to also feel for Janner and Kalmar and Lily that there was
yep.
no way out, and to surprise the reader. And that's eucatastrophe. So yeah, there's a little bit of that in there, but I think uh, there are other themes in my books that showed up that are
Mm,
a little different from what he was doing.
yeah, yeah. Because I'm not sure. Would you would you say like that the Wingfeather Saga is a quote unquote Christian story? In that would you s I'm assuming it's not like analogy, we're not talking Narnia levels here. It feels like it's more that there are ingredients deeply embedded in it rather than it being like this, and this person is supposed to be Jesus, and this person is obviously supposed to
Hmm.
be, the Antichrist,
Yeah.
and is
Oh
that fair to
man. Yeah.
say?
If you want, so I'm a pastor's kid. If you want to make a pastor's kid fall asleep, make a story a lesson.
Okay. Yeah,
Like,
sure.
as soon as I sense that there's some, like, oh, this is just it
Yeah.
breaks the spell. Like, I was in, and then the author's agenda showed up, and it kind of like popped the bubble and
It's like they
suddenly,
pull the lever, right? And you like fall into
yeah.
this ditch of morality. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And so there are stories that are like Pilgrim's Progress is that way. It's an allegory that
Yeah. Yeah.
I've never read it. I've heard it's very good. But uh, I I desperately did not want the Wingfeather Saga to be that way.
Hmm.
I really
Okay.
wanted to just tell the very best story that I could tell. I like the question I kept asking myself was, what would 10 or 12-year-old Andrew most want to happen next? And
Yeah.
so I just wanted to write a story that would give a kid or a grown up out there that little tingle in their stomach that they were kind of like caught up in a great tale.
Mm.
Having said that, I also believe that God works through his people. And so I
Yep.
was just very excited to see how, if I relinquished control over any spiritual themes in the story and just tried to tell a great story, how would those show up? And they definitely did. So a friend of mine puts it. She said that the Wingfeather Saga is not overtly Christian, but it is deeply Christian. And so,
Saturated in Christian. Yeah.
but like one of the great joys in my life as an author has been the fact that Barnes and Noble, our big chain bookstore here, I guess
Mm.
like Waterstones in the UK.
Yeah, I only learned that you
The
don't have that in the States very recently when I was like, Waterstones. And they're like,
Yeah.
are you? I think someone really thought I was speaking about like some kind of sacred stones that I thought were in America. No.
Yeah, that's so funny. I love Waterstones though. Like, but at Barnes and Noble, our chain,
Yep.
the books live on the shelf in the young adult section, right next to Philip Pullman and J.K. Rowling and
Oh, that's
uh,
so good.
Captain Underpants, and that's where
Yeah.
I wanted them to be. I'm not trying to
Yes.
hoodwink anybody. I
Yes.
genuinely think I wanted to tell a great fantasy story, and in the same way that when you read The Golden Compass, the Philip Pullman books, you can tell that this guy does not like Narnia. You can tell this guy doesn't like Christians because his who he is coming out in the story. And so there's been a few times I've gone to the store and they filed my books in the Christian fiction section, and
Uh,
I literally pick them up and put them back in the other
Yeah.
section because I want to be
I
like,
like that.
no, you didn't file Philip Pullman in the atheist section. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't make
Yeah.
any sense. So anyway, I just think that yeah, I believe that in as much as my story taps into the good, the true, and the beautiful, then it is a Christian
Um,
story.
Yeah, I mean, this leads me perfectly into something that I think about a lot, really. We've already mentioned Lewis and we've mentioned Tolkien, Pullman, although he's like doing the same thing but literally from the other direction. And we've got the
Hmm.
week of Catherine Rundle, and I'm just wondering why so many fantasy books where these worlds are being built, they so often flow from this like rich well of belief. And even in
Mm.
Philip Pullman, I think, oh gosh, he'd hate me saying this. I think that's the case. It's just he's
Yeah. Oh, it
believing in
definitely is.
yeah, like the Golden Compass is flowing out of a place of faith for him. It's just that faith is not in what Lewis's faith is in. Sorry, Pullman.
It's true.
uh, yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. And so I was just wondering, I just want to pick your brains on that. Like what's the correlation, do you think, between and actually we've touched upon elements of it, but why are some of the richest worlds built by people who have profound kind of metaphysical
Mm.
curiosities and certainties and just they just have their mind in these things.
Man, that is a really good question. I'm not sure that I've ever answered that question. I mean, maybe it's that uh, I don't know. One of the things about a hard atheist worldview is that it kind of like cuts you off from the possibility of there being more than we can see. The materialist
Mm,
worldview is one that's very kind of cold and clinical, which isn't to say that scientists who don't believe in God aren't like full of wonder at the world. I think that a lot of them are, and that's what's
mm,
gotten them into the thing. But the idea that there could be shimmering at the edges of things, this meaning, um, not just mechanics but meaning infused in it, is what writing kind of is. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't make any sense to me that a human being, would feel an impulse to build a world and express part of their hearts through these made up characters and bind them up into a book and send them out into the world. Like the writing is very difficult. So in order um, to be willing to sign up for the long game of spending a year on a book that may be terrible, for all
Yeah.
and is this like deep act of faith as a writer,
Yeah.
because you believe in stories, because you believe stories somehow is the language our hearts were wired to speak, and that can affect change in people, no matter what you believe from a Christian standpoint. I just think that, like, fantasy authors are people who are probably more um, wonderstruck by that notion.
That's a gorgeous answer. That phrase, "these are shimmering at the edge of things," I'm gonna ruthlessly steal and deploy that regularly, if I may.
uh, of course.
Um, yes, yeah, I need a great answer to that question. Can I flip that on its head a little? Something I've been thinking about a lot recently, because it's something I've been writing a lot about, is the role of imagination when it comes to truth. Because
Hmm.
I'm fascinated at the moment by mystery, by our kind of disenchantment with knowing, and our the allure that unknowing seems to be having on us at the moment.
Hmm.
And so I would love to know, imagination. I think the more I'm researching, reading, writing, I'm coming to be quite firm on the fact that it's a truth telling faculty, I think.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and I would love to know the role that imagination has had, however you want to define imagination, by the way, has had on your faith.
Well, I'm going to steal part of my answer from a friend of mine named Jonathan Rogers. He and I were talking
Mm,
about this. He tells a story. He's an author here in the States, and he tells a story about um, how there was when he was a schoolboy, there was a kid in his class that was kind of like the bad kid that, everybody thought was just going to end up, going off the rails or whatever. But his teacher um, really cared for him and
mm,
spent time with this young man, and that young man made it through high school and ended up being fine. And he was talking about how that teacher, she was able to see a future in that kid that the kid couldn't see, and it was this profound act of imagination, that when she looked
mm,
at this kid, she was able to see something that he couldn't see. So there's a sense in which imagination is, the way we usually use it is making things up, like, oh, you have such
um, yeah,
an imagination, you can just come up with stories or paintings or
yeah.
whatever. But I think,
Imaginary, right? As
yeah,
opposed to
there it is. Yeah.
imagination. Yeah.
But Jonathan kind of pointed out that imagination is being able to see not something that isn't there, but something that is there and has been obscured.
Ooh, okay.
Does that make
That's
sense?
that makes
So,
sense.
I think
Yeah.
we were talking about, you used the word re-enchantment before, is that there's
Yeah.
this sense that my imagination has allowed me to see what, the growing up in a broken world has put a kind of scales over our eyes, and coming to believe that Jesus made the cosmos, and that he's kind and good and beautiful,
Mm,
and has this, he is a storyteller. There is a direction that the universe is headed, and it is headed toward justice um and peace and goodness, right? And so that allows me to, I think the exercising of the muscle of imagination allows you to um, move through the world maybe a little better able to spot the moments where
mm,
the world that's coming is already here. So I mean, I kind of think of it as like, they're waves lapping, the waves of the new creation sometimes lap up on the shore of this beautiful broken world. And we get these little glimpses. And so, like we were talking about earlier, art is one of those places where I catch those glimpses. Even from when I was a little boy, I remember being so moved by movies and comic books and visual art and great stories. There was something going on inside me, and I wanted to get inside of it all and understand why these things were moving me the way that they were. Now that I'm an old man, almost 52, I'm seeing that I really believe that those are moments where the waves of the new creation are lapping up on the shores of this one. And so we're getting these little glimpses of what's coming. And so, yeah, I think that's the best answer that I could give you is that I look at the world differently now than I did before I was a Christian. Like I see the world as this place that's like, pregnant with possibility. And the Bible, Paul even talks about how all of creation is groaning in the pains of childbirth, waiting for the moment for this consummation, for the thing to be born in its final state. And I just can't wait for it. But it's early summer here in Nashville. Nashville in May and June is like the prettiest place in the world to me. I love the UK truly. And I'm not sure that it tops Nashville in May. Sorry.
No, you go for that.
um,
You gotta root for where you're grounded.
that's
Root for
right.
where
That's
you're
right.
rooted.
And we spend our summers over in the UK, and so because I love it so much. But man, it's like pulling teeth to get me to leave my property in May, because um, I sense the new creation here. I get my imagination allows me to look around and see a little glimpse of the world as it's meant to be. And I think that that's what our job as artists are, is to kind of
Yeah.
paint pictures of your best imagining of the world that's coming.
Oh, wow, wait, I don't know how to answer another question after that. That's so good. Um, yeah, because there's this but then there's this tension, right? Because if we try too hard to stretch those things out and explain them, which I don't know about you, but like me being a weirdsy girl, where language ends is where the truest stuff is. Yet I want
Mm,
language to talk about, define, and explain those things. So the
mm,
tension in me of having those glimmers of seeing the shimmering edges and then wanting somehow to capture it, to define it, to put language to it, and then
mhm.
it all kind of falls through my fingers a little bit.
Oh, it's maddening. It's maddening. I know exactly
Right?
what you're talking about. Yeah. It's like trying to explain a great dream that you had to someone over breakfast. And
Yeah.
as you're telling them the dream, it starts to vanish. Um, yeah, it's the
Yes.
same feeling.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like it's like the best and worst thing apart apart believing what I believe. There's I mean, that
Can I
reminds
add something to that really quick before you ask the
please. Yeah,
question?
yeah,
This
yeah.
just popped into my head. Um, I'm a word guy. Like my songs are part of what got me into songwriting was my love of words. And
Mm.
I like to write poems and stories. I love stories. And um, it's funny because the older that I've gotten, like when I walk around the countryside around our house in the springtime, my kids, when they were in the house, they're all grown and married now, but they used to laugh at me because they would look out their window and be like, "Oh, well, there's Dad looking at a maple tree again." And it was so funny because I would be standing out there in the yard looking at a maple tree, and people, um, my kids and my wife would ask me like, "What are you thinking about when you're out there?" And I would tell them, nothing. My mind is like a total blank slate.
Mm.
And
Mm.
I've talked to friends who are like, "Oh, I bet you're just out there looking at those mountains or whatever, writing songs and thinking of the," and I'm like, "No, actually, not at all." Like in those moments, I have delightfully moved beyond words and
Mm.
into being fully present to the beauty that's in front of me. And
Yeah.
I'm I feel like maybe that's something worth aspiring to. You're talking about wanting to
Mm.
like find the words to understand the thing that you're experiencing or that you believe. And
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that. That's what I have done for my whole career, is to try to um, articulate what it is that I believe,
Yes.
or
That's it.
get to what it is that is going on in the world. But there is this space beyond it where you're kind of content
Mm.
to be silent,
Mm.
for your mind to be wordless, and for you to just be beholding something without the need to add our words to it. Like, I think there's something to that. Anyway, I haven't said that out loud much before, but I
No,
felt it's appropriate.
that's perfectly yeah, and that's so countercultural because to just behold something and to not somehow squeeze the juice out of the lemon. Do you know what I mean? Like to not somehow
Hmm.
make that a useful experience or a constructive experience, a profitable even. Like we're
Oh,
both writers,
yeah.
so like I like the tension that I sit in when certain experiences for me become profitable experiences because I'm writing, but like, so it's so countercultural to be like, "No audience will ever see this. This will
Hmm.
never overflow, or I'll never see a direct overflow beyond me and the God that I believed made this maple tree that I'm
Yeah,
staring at." It,
totally.
like, takes a lot of unlearning to do that is what I would say.
It really does. Yeah, and it's such a good use of time. I was
Mm.
talking to an artist friend of mine here in Nashville about how I've been trying to learn to paint and draw better, and I said it's hard to justify spending a few hours on something that isn't tied to my career.
Yeah,
And she said, "May I suggest that that's the best reason to do it?" And and it did like give me permission to be like, yeah, I don't have to post this on Instagram. I don't have to
yeah,
monetize it in any way. I'm
yeah.
pretty content to just sketch the thing and leave it in my journal, and maybe my kids
Mm,
will find it when I'm dead. Um, and there is something I think it's important to protect those parts of our days, trusting that God sees it,
mm.
and that this is doing something. It's training us to be content and to be present.
That's really beautiful. Yeah, there's something about wasting time in the
Yeah.
like the spiritual discipline of wasting time.
Yes.
So it's Sabbath, I suppose, right? If we were to sum that up, it's moments of Sabbath,
Yeah. Hmm.
I guess, if we were to kind of attach that label. Okay, before you go, and I've never, and I'm not just saying this, Andrew, I've never been so reluctant to bring an interview into land before.
Oh,
The fact that we've got 10 minutes left feels genuinely like it's grieving me already. Um, But before I leave you, I would love to talk about the place of community in your creativity because you are Mr. Rabbit Room. Like you founded one of the most yeah, like just creativity, community, like Rabbit Room refuses to untangle those two things. And I would love you to just touch upon that, the role that the community has played in any kind of creative endeavor you've kind of gone after.
yeah. I mean, the Rabbit Room was born. Um, this is our 20th year, by the way. We're kind of having celebrating 20
Wow.
years of this ministry, which is nuts. It was born because I just kind of gave a name and a little bit of infrastructure to something that was already happening.
Oh, great. Yeah.
And so, one of the great gifts of living in Nashville is that there's a bunch of other crazy people who moved there to be songwriters or poets or authors or whatever. So it's a really remarkable place in that way. And so, the life of a touring singer songwriter or an author is pretty tricky. If you're trying to pay the mortgage um, and if you've got a side hustle that's
Mm,
supporting this thing that you're trying to do, it's just really hard. It's a I want to be careful with my language. Like it's a great job. I'm not complaining, but there are seasons where you just get used to not knowing how you're going to pay your mortgage or your rent or
mm,
whatever. You just have to constantly be generating ideas um, and the discouragements that come with it. And then there will be these high highs and these low lows. What I've realized over the years, early on, was that it's just almost impossible unless you've got a band of merry men and women around you who are also um, in the trenches, so to speak. And so, I realized that there were all these people who were Christians who moved to Nashville because they loved a certain kind of song, which wasn't necessarily what was getting played on the radio and wasn't
mm.
always what the labels were interested in, but we believed in it. You know what I mean? And so there were people that told me again and again, don't quit, forget the masses, think about your community and write the songs for them because
Oh,
they
wow.
need your songs. And then I was
Yeah.
able to reciprocate and say the same thing back to them. And so there was something really sweet about the way I put it is that art nourishes community and that community nourishes art. And so and then I took this trip to Oxford years ago, which has become one of my favorite places to be, and visited the Eagle and Child where Lewis and Tolkien would hang out with Charles Williams and their buddies.
Yeah.
And something about that visit reminded me that these guys weren't just nerdy authors, they were buddies. they were friends.
Oh.
They were drawn to each other because of their love of story. But once they got over that hurdle, it became something that was their community. It was a need that they had to get together and have a pint and be together. And so it was almost like the stories were corollary to the friendship that was happening. And that's what I've experienced too, is that, people aren't going to remember my songs in 50 years, but the fruit of the friendships and the community and the church, the way our kids are growing up in this really beautiful, rich community of artists who believe in something, um, is going to outlast any of the songs that we're writing. You know what I mean? That's the more important thing, is the friends that you're going to get along the way. And so that's kind of where the Rabbit Room was born.
Yeah, I mean, you spoke earlier about like creative being something everyone is, because we were made in the image of God, because so we're made creators, right? We're made
Mhm.
creatives, like sub creators, would we say? I don't know. I realize
Yeah.
I just made it sound like we were all gods, and I obviously don't,
No,
obviously don't mean
little
that.
C creators. Yeah.
That's it, small c creators. And it just strikes me that community is another thing we inherently were built for, made for, and I know that certain personality types lend itself more to that than others, but we were made to know and be known, to see and be seen,
Mhm.
and love and be loved, right? So
Yeah.
it, it just makes total sense that, like, you're like, well, these are two things that are woven into our DNA, our
Hmm.
humanness, and so we can't exist without either one, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. It strikes me that, that idea of the Trinity, and I don't want to get like crazy theological here, but that idea that the Trinity is like a community. It's like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
God is one, but there is this sense of like love
Mm,
that exists there. And that what spills out of that is the cosmos.
yeah.
This creative world that's just like bouncing off of everything. I don't know. So in the same sense, I think we were, like you said, made to love and be loved. And what spills out of that is little worlds. I think that's pretty cool.
I think that's so cool. Okay, my final question before we call this a day is, I just kind of want to know right now, like right in the month of June in your property in Nashville, just what's re-enchanting you at the moment? Be that
Mm,
words or what's happening outside your door, just anything at all.
a great question. Being a grandfather is
Yeah,
definitely a re-enchanting experience.
yeah.
Seeing the world through this little 3-year old's eyes is
Mm.
really amazing. Teaching her about, like, we went and picked blueberries yesterday, um, and just kind of like holding my little 3-year old daughter on my hip and showing her which blueberries were ripe, and just thinking, uh, kind of it re-enchanted how marvelous it is that there's a bush that has these little candies that grow off of it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
crazy. It's
yeah.
crazy. And so we were standing there, and I felt, it was like, this is amazing. The world is amazing. So that's part of it. I was, not to get too specific, but I just read Piranesi by Susanna Clark. Do you know that book?
I do. I haven't read it,
Um,
but I know of it. Yeah,
Okay, you need to read it. I
yeah.
loved Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, but Piranesi is just this amazing head trip of a book that reminds you that the world means something. That's kind of like,
Ooh.
I think, the thrust of the book in some ways. Like, I remember finishing the book, and the next morning I saw a moon coming up over the horizon. I got up before dawn for some reason, and I started crying. I was just looking at this beautiful scene because I just had the sense that uh, we were living in this diorama, this little the toy world that God had
Mm,
made. That's the
mm.
feeling that the book gives you. So yeah, stories do it. Malcolm Geit's Galahad and the Grail. I just finished.
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah,
too finished that maybe a week or so ago. Yeah.
so good. And that idea that England is just dripping with
Oh, yeah.
enchantment, and to pull the scales back and like remember that the world is amazing. I think that those are a few things that pop into my head.
Oh, I mean, Markham Guy's got re-enchantment in his bones. In his
I
bones.
think so.
I'm dwelling on that. I'm dwelling so on the prologue to Galahad and the Grail. I've read that every day because it's like a
Mm,
manifesto to create and specifically to do the work to make the things that scare you. Like, if it scares you, you're probably specifically called to
Yeah,
work that thing out, to wrangle that thing into
absolutely.
existence, right?
Hmm.
Oh, okay. Right. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me on
Oh,
Re-Enchanting.
it has been such a fun conversation. Thank you so much for asking good questions that like made me. I'll be thinking about these questions for the rest of the day for sure. So thank
Oh,
you.
well, we'll be thinking about the answers. So what a joy. What a joy. Andrew, thank you so much. Re-Enchanting listeners, it is Belle here. And before we leave you, we have some news for you, something to announce. And that is, and it's a bittersweet announcement, I must say, because that is that my partner in crime, Justin Briley, this is his last episode with Re-Enchanting.
I know.
Justin.
I'm sorry, Belle. Sorry. I feel like I'm betraying you and the whole team after 9 seasons of wonderful shows to be saying goodbye to Re-Enchanting. But here we are.
Oh, here we are. 9 seasons, 3 years. I think we've been doing this
Yeah,
together.
that's right. Yeah, what a ride it's been. Yeah,
I mean,
wonderful.
it's flown by. I'm here joined with Graham, who, I mean, Graham and Justin, you were actually a part of Re-Enchanting before I stepped on the scene.
We were, yeah. I remember the very early days when I was beginning to think up the idea of what became Seen and Unseen. And I can't remember how we got in touch, Justin, but we did. And we had a coffee, I think, somewhere near Vauxhall Bridge in London. And I think you were beginning to change your working circumstances as well. And we kind of hatched this plan of doing something together. And because what emerged out of that, and I remember we had a conversation, I think, around this theme of enchantment and the disenchantment of the world, and and all of that. And so anyway, it gradually emerged, this potential of a partnership that just as Seen and Unseen started, Re-Enchanting started as well. And I just wanted to. I guess, and then Belle joined the team, and I think we had this idea. Actually, Belle and Justin might work quite well together. And I think you've done a brilliant job. And so I just wanted to do a big thank you to you, Justin, for all that you've given to Re-Enchanting over these years. You've been a brilliant host. Your skill at having conversations and enabling people to kind of talk very honestly about themselves has been a fascinating and a really kind of worthwhile thing to do. And I think you as a team, Belle and Justin, you've been brilliant together on it. So we're really grateful to you for all you've contributed to Re-Enchanting and to Seen and Unseen so far.
Well, bless you so much. I mean, it's been an absolute joy, and Re-Enchanting was really the first thing I stepped into after over 20 years of doing some of my previous work on The Unbelievable Show and other podcasts and things for Premier Christian Radio. So it was wonderful to be able to continue to do what I loved, which was have conversations with interesting people. And in a way, Re-Enchanting was the perfect vehicle for me just to kind of get to invite all my favourite people to come on the show and talk about fascinating things. So I remember, that first season going back then when it was all brand new and we were obviously filming up at the top floor of Lambeth Palace Library overlooking London. Some highlights were having Tom Holland and Louise Perry and Paul Kingsnorth in that first set of episodes, all people who I'd kind of been starting to sense were part of this, what I ended up calling the surprising rebirth of belief in God, this kind of reawakening to the value of faith and that sort of thing in both historical and cultural and sort of academic and literary circles. So it was just, it just allowed me, alongside you, Belle, to just meet and talk about and start to refine my own thinking and work out what was going on in this new moment. And Re-Enchanting was, I think that was your idea, Graham, for the title of this podcast. And but it perfectly encapsulated it, because I think we are in this kind of Re-Enchanting moment. And it was just wonderful to see how many other people, kind of were going along with that and saying, this feels like something that we really need to hear at the moment. So 3 years in, I think there's still every reason why we need to be kind of continuing to have these kinds of conversations. I'm very sorry that I won't be joining you for them anymore. And that's just because life moves on and there's lots of projects that are calling for my attention. And I have a feeling it'll be in very safe hands now with especially with Belle still in the main seat.
Oh, you're very kind. Okay, so I have 2 quick questions for you, Justin, before we let you go. And listen, I'm sure as soon as we possibly can get you back as a guest, it's happening. So you won't be gone for long. But 2 questions. The first, I would love to know any standout moments from our 9 series together.
It's like asking me to choose between my children.
I know, I am
it is
sorry.
so hard, But we're what 90 episodes in now, over 9, and where do you go? I mean, I would say that one of the stories that sort of really hit me powerfully, and I think probably did you as well, at the time he came and joined us to tell his story, was Edmond Laperouse, Belle, and that story of his the way in which he told this story of him and his daughter Natasha going on this flight in which she had this allergic reaction to some food she'd eaten at the airport, and but the way in which he told it with so much raw vulnerability and the awful, tragedy of her death, but this extraordinary angelic encounter he had, and it was kind of like quite unusual. We'd never kind of had a conversation quite like that, where it really was just centered around this extraordinary experience that Edmund had. But it kind of it just stayed with me a long time after I left, the studio, and the way in which he was a living testament to the way that awful experience had nonetheless been a catalyst for his own transformation, and the way, and on all the things that came out of it. And so that was kind of one of the standout ones for me. Well worth going back and watching and listening to. Quite a difficult one in some ways to watch and listen to. But yeah, I was just, extraordinary story. I mean, again, so hard to choose between them, but I, like you, Belle, have been enormously influenced by Ian McGilchrist. And so the conversation we had with him about the left and right hemispheres, just fascinating stuff. The way in which he's obviously sees the way that those two spheres of the way we engage the world and what we pay attention to, have come to so radically change the way we engage with the world and the way we understand it. So again, just what a privilege to be able to have that kind of a conversation with someone like Ian. But yeah, I suppose some of the ones that really do stick with those are kind of those very early ones, with people like Tom Holland and Paul Kingsnorth, Louise Perry that I already mentioned, because there was I felt like we were on the cusp of something, and it's been so fun to sort of see the way that's been played out in all kinds of interviews and conversations that we've had ever since. I've also enjoyed some of the really lighter ones, those were quite deep and meaningful. Milton Jones talking about comedy, or Frank Skinner, another amazing comedian, from, what was it, season 2, I think Frank Skinner joined us on. And just sort of seeing life from his perspective, and just getting to kind of, see through his experience as a sort of, born and bred Catholic who sort of went off on some pretty wild adventures, with David Baddiel, his comedy partner. But somehow God sort of was always there in some way, and has become obviously more and more important to him as life has gone on. So yeah, so many that I could choose from, but yeah, those are just a few of the many highlights.
Oh, that's a special sample. Yes. Okay. So my final question before we bid you farewell is just where people can find you, therefore, from here on out. And I'm sure so many of our listeners are also already know your other shows well, but just in case anyone doesn't, point us in your direction, Justin.
Thank you very much. Well, yes, if you haven't come across it already, there's a podcast called The Surprising Rebirth of Belief in God, which was sort of based on a book I wrote a few years ago of the same name. But we're now sort of 2 seasons in, getting ready for a 3rd season of that this later on in the year. And that's really telling the story of kind of, what we talk about on this show a lot, the way in which the atheist materialist way of looking at the world seems to be being pushed back on, and how many interesting thinkers in the secular world very often there are talking about Christian faith. And I've been tracing that out, especially in the last season or 2, in the way we're also seeing an uptick in what seems to be a really interest and awakening in Christian faith in so many different areas. So still to come on the next season, we're going to be talking about like the what's going on in football. People, so many players who can't seem to stop talking about God in their post-match interviews and things like that. Or, Scandinavian countries seeing an extraordinary uptick in the number of young men, especially interestingly, coming back to church, things like that. So that's one place to find me, The Surprising Rebirth of Belief in God. Over on my video channel as well, just search for Justin Briley on YouTube. You can find lots of interviews and things. And the new show that we've just started, I say just started, a few months ago now, we started a new dialogue show, bring me back into the moderating seat. It's called Uncommon Ground. And yeah, I just get to sit down with fascinating people on different sides of issues. We started with Richard Dawkins opposite Rowan Williams for episode 1 of that, talking about science and faith. And we just get to dialogue and debate on all kinds of things. So yeah, we're well into that first season of that now. So Uncommon Ground, you can find that just by searching up, or go to my website justinbriley.com, and you can find the links to everything.
Perfect. Okay. It is very, I have a very bittersweet job, which is bidding you farewell, Justin. And just from a personal point of view, our listeners, if you've been here from season 1, then you will know that I had never done anything like this before I sat next to Justin Briley and recorded episode 1 of Re-Enchanting, which had Graham on it. So this is very full circle. And he has very patiently, very kindly let me sit next to him and learn from the best, and allowed me to catch up with him in all of his expertise. And so I personally am incredibly thankful and will miss him a huge amount. And I know that you, our listeners, will too. So Justin, we're very sad to see you go, but excited about all the places we can find you.
And you won't have seen the last of me, Belle, obviously.
No.
I can imagine. When I've got another book, I'll be back here telling you what I've been reading, what's on my bedstand.
Please do. And I'm expecting more than one answer.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I think also to both of you, I mean, I travel around quite a lot, do various speaking. I was in the USA the last couple of weeks. And I keep on coming across people who've found Re-Enchanting and found it such a fresh voice in the kind of world of podcast that's there. There's a kind of inquisitiveness, there's an openness, there's a richness of conversations. I think you've both done a great job, and Justin, you've been a great part of that. But Re-Enchanting will continue. Is that right, Belle?
Have no fear, listeners. Re-Enchanting will continue. We will be back with a live episode this summer to round off this very series. And we'll be back later in the year with another series of Re-Enchanting, just surveying that cultural landscape as we do. And so have no fear. We will be back. We'll just be missing one key part. But yes, for now, for the last time. Do you know what, Justin? You should have the final word.
Should I? Okay.
Yes,
all right.
go
Well,
for
if you
it.
insist, Belle, and thank you for the lovely, kind words. It's been lovely. Parting is such sweet sorrow. But for now, thank you, all the Re-Enchanting viewers and listeners. It's been a really wild ride over the last 3 years. Thank you for all the love and all the interest and all the fascinating conversations that have emerged from it. But for now, from myself, from Graham, and from Belle, it's goodbye.